What's up? And welcome to Forte Catholic. I am your host, Taylor and today's co-host, Father Anthony Sciarappa. I would say he looks ridiculous, but that's an assumption. You look clinically insane today. What is going on with you? Oh my goodness, dude.
Well, I mean, as people know, once if you have nowhere to go, like, why would you fix your hair or do anything like that? I also got a cool new hats, a cool new Forte Catholic hat in the mail, and a cool Forte Catholic t-shirt. So I'm wearing both of those. I like a deranged super fan of the show today, and that's really is what I am.
Deranged is the perfect verb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You look insane. And I think that you are. It's not just how you are looking today. There's also another story that you shared with me earlier. We both have big news today.
Okay.
And we'll get to my big news. And I've joked before that we have big news. Today might be the biggest news I've ever shared on the show. But first, we have to get to your news of the day. You look like this. You're wearing this, all the Forte Catholic gear, and your hair has grown. And yes, I'm bitter because mine doesn't. But for once, I look better than you. Jeez Louise, dude, you look insane. And you did something insane today. Why don't you share with the people what happened?
It's not insane. Like, there are certain things that I actually am good at. I'm good at preaching and teaching and various priestly things. But there are certain, like, normal human things I'm really bad at. So today...
You know what that sounds like?
What?
A Catholic priest.
It doesn't it? Doesn't it? It does, though. Mm-hmm.
You picked the right vocation.
Yeah. So today I was going out to my car because I wanted to go get something. And as soon as I closed the door to my rectory, I realized two things. One, that I didn't have my keys. And two, that I just didn't have my keys. So I had locked myself out of the rectory. I could not get to my car. And if I could, all my keys are on one keychain. And I had locked myself out of the rectory. And this is not even close to the first time this has happened to me. Happens maybe every 4 or 5 months since I've been ordained. So I called Sister, who works at our parish. Her name is Sister. She's a sister. And
Sister.
So I called her like, hey, I locked myself out of the parish. And she was like, oh, did you call the other priest who lives with you? I said, yeah, of course I did. And he's already gone for his day off. And she says, oh, how about you just drive over? Because I'm still working. How about you just drive over and pick up the keys? I was like, sister, you do not understand the error of my ways. I am stuck. I can't drive anywhere. So anyway, luckily it was a very nice day out. And sister came and she rescued me and let me back into my house. So here we are. And I feel great. I feel smart and competent and like a good person. That's how I feel today.
Most of the time when I lock myself out of my house, it requires bartering with my 7-year-old. Like, just open the door, So we both have different things. You called a sister. Mm-hmm. I called my son. One time I locked my keys in a running car because I had AirPods in and I was stressed out, so I couldn't hear that the car was on. And I'm stupid. I mean, that's the primary reason, but also the AirPods. And so I was getting out to get my to-go order back when we could go places. Right. And I left the car on, locked the door, and immediately, like you said, closed the door, and immediately was like, that car's on. So I my wife and kids were out of town. This is the one time I had experience like you because I didn't have, like, a family. Yeah. And so I called the locksmith, and I was like, there's nothing I can do about it. So I called the locksmith. He said, I'm going to take 45 minutes. So instead of taking to-go order, I just went in, got my food, sat there, ate it. And by the time I was done eating, I waited like 4 minutes and he showed up and I was able to go home. So, I mean, all I really lost was, a few bucks to get him to open it up and like 5 extra minutes. So it's pretty great.
See, it turned out okay. That's nice.
The craziest part about your story to me is that sister still trusted that you had any semblance of respect, like, having your car keys, like that she wasn't just like, I'll come over immediately. Like she was like, oh no, you've probably got some control over this situation.
Right. Yeah. Then when she got here, she like apologized, like, oh, I should have known. Of course you already called Father Brendan. Of course that's why you called me, because there was no other option. I was like, sure. Yeah. We both know who I am, sister. You had every right to ask those questions.
Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah.
Sister, it's a house. Speaking of houses turning off and on again, though. So here I am in the Forte Catholic headquarters. And maybe people notice, maybe they don't. It's brighter in here today because the fluorescent yellow lights turned into white LEDs.
Mhm.
And most of the best decisions I've ever made. So I know you're familiar with Ignatian spirituality, at least some.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So making the main rule that I remember from Ignatian spirituality and Ignatian discernment is never make decisions in desolation.
Correct.
All the best decisions I've ever made in my life were in desolation.
Fascinating.
And we're going to talk about that when it involves the big news that I said we're going to share about today.
Mm-hmm.
But a little funny example is I was trying to do a Facebook Live with another podcaster. He invited me on. We're going to do the podcast live on Facebook. I walked in here. All I have to do in here is go turn on that light switch, turn on my computer, and turn on my sound system, and boom, everything's ready to go. So I walk in, the lights don't turn on. They're just completely dead. And I'd been like, you know what? Eventually I'll replace them and put LEDs in. But that was terrible timing.
Yeah.
So here I am, getting older all the time. That's just for the people who are excited that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is being remastered. Yes. That's a side note. But here I am in the studio. This is live, so I'm already 5 minutes late, and I'm just yelling at my family, "Bring all the lamps!" So I do an entire lamp lit show, and I look terrifying. And so yeah, I put in the LEDs, and that was a big change that I had to make out of necessity. Okay.
Yes.
Not really desolation, but I was in desolation, but it had
You were in darkness for sure.
I was in the people in darkness have seen LED lights. Oh man. Okay, so are we ready for the big news?
I don't know if anybody can be ready for this news, but might as well do it anyway.
So I'm going to lead with the news, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
It's very exciting.
It is exciting. So, because you are a part of this, some people in the law, they call that an accomplice. So if anyone's mad, I just want everybody to know.
You're trusting the guy who locks himself out of his own rectory every once in a while with your life, basically.
And Allison Sullivan is going through all kinds of things during the quarantine. So these are the people that I have trusted. As of the end of this month, I am no longer working with Ablaze Ministries, who I have been working with as a missionary for 5 years, and I have launched Forte Catholic as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I'm going to be doing this full time.
Dun, 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 dun.
That is the news.
Yay!
So the cool thing is I'm going to be able to focus on all this full time, so I'll be able to put in sound effects instead of having Anthony do them.
Oh no, that was pretty good. You might want to save that sound clip.
I don't know.
Down your soundboard.
I have
stupid laugh.
My saved sound clips for sure.
Yeah.
This one's my favorite.
I do not like that one.
Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I just pull out my iPad and I just push that once, and immediately I'm in a better mood.
Oh, I'm glad I can help.
So here we are, guys. Thanks, COVID. So the last time my life changed drastically, 5 years ago, when I decided to come to Ablaze, this is how God often speaks to me. I am going to just crazily push through things. Fortitude is the one virtue I have, I think. Even if it means doing something bad, I'm going to keep doing it until something tells me to change. Something very drastic. So moving here and taking the job at the Blaze is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Getting married and having 2 of our 3 kids, just great decisions. Nothing. I thought that was good, but
yeah. Well, sorry.
You're like Liv Harrison. You just refuse to react to anything anymore.
Like yes.
So, just a great decision. I was at my previous parish, I was just kind of burnt out, and I was leaving youth ministry and coming to Ablaze, which is a huge step. I was able to start Forte Catholic, the show and the website and all of these things because of essentially Ablaze allowing me to do that. And that decision was made I was sick, physically ill for a year. I got strep throat every 2 weeks. It was on for 2 weeks, off for 2 weeks, on for 2 weeks. And then it ended with me getting my tonsils removed. And that can be a hard thing when people usually get it when they're kids.
You can't get strep throat if you have no throat.
Yeah. So they ripped out my throat, and Some people's it's like really easy. It's like a day recovery. For me, it was 7 days. I couldn't eat or drink anything.
Ugh.
I tried water one time and it was searing pain, and I tried one of those like milk protein things that old people drink.
Yeah.
It was just too painful. So I didn't put anything into my body for 7 days. And it's the best weight loss program I've ever done. I lost 24 pounds in a
do
week.
it.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I was so mad because everybody kept saying like, "Hey, you look great" when I got back to work and stuff. I was like, shut up. So anyway, like it was during that time that I realized, man, I'm not happy here, and this isn't good for me. I need to move on. And then here comes these 5 years, and then like I was like I always thought and dreamed, oh, maybe doing Forte Catholic full time is something that I can do in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. By the way, I think the best COVID joke I've seen is people are like, anybody who answered the question, what do you think your life looks like in 5 years in 2015 was very wrong. And if they were right, we need to talk to that person.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I mean, like a lot of things happened. A lot of COVID was a big part of it, where it's just like, I mean, all of our entire worlds changed, and it was rough for me. And I shared a little bit about it on the show. I've kind of been talking about it in code for weeks now.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, like my world fell apart. A lot of like financially it fell apart. Just like my entire mission was gone. And I was like, man, like, what am I going to do? And here I am in desolation, sick, maybe the COVID, maybe the not, I'm not sure. And like my world falling apart and super stressed out. And I kind of froze. Like I didn't think about it. I couldn't like bring myself to think about it, to really pray about it. Like every time I went to prayer, I was like,
Is that not your normal prayer?
Well, usually it's that, but on a lighter note, like,
oh, beautiful.
Almost holy, but also like this sense of desperation under it.
Yes, good.
So yeah, like I was just kind of frozen, and then like I started talking to like people pretty close to me, like my wife, my best friend, a financial guy, you and Allison, and like just a couple of people kind of in my inner circle, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And like the first 4 people that I talked to all said, oh, so you're going to do Forte Catholic full time now? I'm like, no, that's insane. And then the next person said it, and the next person said it, and the next person said it. And God hasn't talked to me in a while, but that seemed to be pretty obvious.
Sometimes, sometimes this is overused, but it is a true thing that God will speak to us through other people. And if the people you all like love and trust are all saying the same thing, then that's pretty good confirmation.
Or they also might be messing with me, and I'm still not quite sure.
Ooh, that's tough. Yeah, we'll find out.
We will find out. So it was one of those things that I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Everything's falling apart. And I finally went to prayer. It was like 2 days before they closed the world. And I go into adoration, this little like adoration chapel that's like, it's 24 hours open, but it's like closed. It's got those like little peekaboo doors.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So like you have like people who are in the know have a code, and you can go in, and it's a not a monstrance, it's a tabernacle that has like these little flaps on it. So there's always a host in there. So you go up, you genuflect, you open it up. Okay, fine. Some people might be mad at it. Whatever. I don't care. I had a cool experience in there. So I would go in, I kneel down, and I open up the flaps, and I go kneel down, and I start praying. And I think I've been praying for like 30 minutes. And I look at my phone. It's been 2 minutes. And then I'm frustrated at myself and frustrated at God. I'm just like, everything's bad. And then I close my eyes again. And 40 minutes later, I look at my phone, and I had been praying that whole time. Longest time I've prayed, like one sitting. Like, I mean, my attention span is no longer than 97 seconds. I mean,
right. Yeah.
And but it was essentially there. It was like, hey, you dummy, I was talking to you through these 4 people. Apparently there's a saint that said like if there's a confirmation of 3 people, when it's not like, hey Anthony, do you like this shirt, and you say yes, that doesn't count. But like I walk in with the shirt and you're like, hey, I like that shirt, like that, and then 2 other people do that, it's like, it's probably a good shirt.
God likes that shirt.
So I'm never taking this shirt off. That's not the point.
Hey, look good.
But yeah, I mean, it was like, it was those confirmation from those people. And then I started, like, once I started doing it, and I was like, wow, this feels right. Because obviously I'm really passionate about this stuff. I've been doing it for, I mean, we launched this almost 5 years ago. We launched the show almost 4 years ago. and I love doing it. I love the joy that's been bringing people. And like, there've been a lot of people like, I actually shared on the show like 2 weeks ago that I almost teared up when Caitlin T with Tolkien shared some very kind words about the show. And it was like what she didn't know until right now when she's listening. Hi, Caitlin. Is that like, that was at a moment where I was like, God, is this really what I should be doing? And then she sent that tweet. I was like, dang it, Caitlin.
There you go.
So yeah, so I mean, it's essential. The cool news is like I've been a missionary for 5 years. So I have a support team that many of them are coming with me. I've talked to a lot of them already, and I'll still be calling the rest of them this week. A lot of that support is coming over. So the primary things that I'll be doing is making this content. So the podcast, YouTube stuff, talks, all the stuff that we've been doing there, helping other people create their content. So I actually just got my 10th podcast that I'm producing for other Catholics.
So many podcasts.
It really is. It really is. But you're catching up. You keep creating podcasts. What are you up to? 5 now?
4 that I'm involved with in some sort of way, I think. But I don't produce all of them. That would be way too much work. I just talk into the microphone.
There's one that you produced by yourself, and I was like, please let your brother do it for you.
Nope. I pay him for the real one. That's all.
And then obviously when the world opens up again, I'll be traveling again. But primarily just doing what we've been doing with the show and with Forte Catholic for 5 years. Except now, it's my primary thing. I'm completely focused on it, and it's a nonprofit. So if people haven't completely lost their jobs and lost all of their money, you can now support Forte Catholic, and it's tax deductible.
Yay!
So if you want to divert some money that way, that would be tremendous. My children now the Christopher's Yogurt Fund isn't just on Patreon. Now you can get a tax deductible donation at fortecatholic.com/donate. And one of the things that it will do is we'll one day thank Father Anthony for all the work that he's done and send him a $15 gift certificate to a haircut place.
Awesome. I will give that immediately to the poor. I'm keeping it.
All right. So that's the news. I mean, like, I've been super stressed about it, and here it is. It's happening.
There it is for the whole world to know.
Yes, the whole world that will hear this.
Millions and millions of Forte fans.
And you are chief among them because
because I have the hats.
All right, so I guess the final question before we move on to our guest today is, am I crazy?
You got to be a little bit crazy. Crazy doesn't mean wrong. Crazy doesn't necessarily mean wrong. And I'm excited for you. I think if anyone can pull it off, it's you. And I think you have every reason to feel good about it.
Well, thank you. And I thought that was going to be the last question. I was going to play music, but then you said crazy doesn't always mean wrong. So do you think Jesus was crazy?
It depends what you mean by crazy. He wasn't like insane. But he was pretty, he went for stuff, didn't pull any punches. People would think he's crazy.
Jesus, he went for stuff. Father
he really did. He really went and did the Jesus thing.
Yeah, you're done. Okay, so guys, thank you so much for your support for all these years. Without you guys and without the support, I couldn't have done this. So thanks a ton. We will be right back with Coach Anthony Simon. Do not go anywhere. Anthony, have you ever videoed yourself giving a homily? Take this homily. That's how I feel when I go to mass. Have you ever videoed yourself giving a homily?
Other people have videoed me giving a homily.
Have you done that since COVID started?
Yeah, we were live streaming all of our stuff. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good. Okay, so you're still able to do things. I'm not. So we've been doing these like living room retreats on the old youtube.com/Forte Catholic. And this last week, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. So I said, again, like a thing made out of desperation. I'm tired. Don't feel like doing this. Hey, great idea. I should have other people do this. Mm-hmm. So I called Liv Harrison, who everybody loves and knows from the show. And she gave one of the living room retreats. She called it a living room chat or something. And that made me hate myself. But I fixed it. And people can go watch them. Like, I've given talks. Liv's given talks. And one of these days, I'll rope you into doing it, which is why I asked if you've recorded.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We can make something happen.
It won't be from the living room, but you could call it like a, homily chat or something stupid and make me angry. But head on over to youtube.com/Forte Catholic, and you can hear some great talks or one great talk by Liv and some mediocre talks by me. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is Father Anthony Sciarappa. He has changed his name here on our Zoom call. Father, in parentheses, yes, he is a real priest, end parentheses, Anthony Sciarappa. Because we weren't sure the way he was looking today. So we promised that he is okay, but just in case, we are going to seek the help that he needs desperately at the end of this show. But first,
Thank you.
We have to talk to our guest today because that is more important than Anthony's mental and spiritual health. So today's guest is Coach Anthony Simon. The way that I met this guy was through another podcast that I helped produce and edit, the Alto podcast by Libertas. And essentially what I've realized is that this is a side effect, and not undesired, but unexpected side effect of helping other people with their podcast, is it helps me to vet people who I don't know. So I got to listen to Coach Anthony Simon for a very long time, and I was like, after I edited a lot of the things that he said, he sounded great. So I figured I could do the same thing for him today. So welcome on to the show, Ant.
I appreciate you having me here, Taylor. I'm really excited and can't wait to get started, my man.
Yeah, this is awesome. So I have to share something that you said to me in a text message as we were getting this set up with Father Anthony to get his reaction to it.
Okay.
So Anthony, we're just getting to know each other, and you said something that was very good and true, but we need to get Anthony's reaction to it. So Father Anthony, this is very confusing.
Yeah.
So you're both Anthony S, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
So that concludes our interview today. No, okay. So I got a message from Anthony Simon, the first type of this message ever. This is episode 189, so that means I've had 187 guests on. No, that's a lie. I've had more because I have multiple guests on that. Almost 200 guests. Yeah. And he's the only one that ever texted me, I'll make sure that I'll be in a state of grace for the podcast.
Wow. Even I haven't promised you that.
You haven't promised me that, and I don't think Father Anthony, I don't think you've done one show in a state of grace.
Well, that is none of your business. And wait a second. Wait, Anthony, is this something like do you make sure how many different activities do you make sure you're in a state of grace for before you do? Is it just podcasts, or is it podcasts and going to the grocery store, or is it podcast and before you take a walk? What is it? What's the deal?
Hey, strive for excellence at all times, baby. That's my motto.
That's beautiful. I mean, yeah, sounds good to me. I love it.
I mean, like many people, when I need to make sure I'm in a state of grace is in times where I think I'm going to die. So I think he thought he was going to die. There was a chance of that by coming on this
yeah,
show.
It's really
You never know. You can never be too prepared.
I just thought it was funny, and I'm proud of you. I mean, obviously it's a great thing. It's just not something no one has ever thought I need to be in a state of grace to go on this show. They're like, I'm going to go on that show and then I need to go to confession. They never did confession before. So I thought it was hilarious. So anyway, you are a coach. You're an athlete. You and I have a lot of things in common and a lot of things not in common. And we're going to get into both of those things.
I love it. Let's go.
One of the things that you did is when you were 21 years old, you were double majoring in college, which I was doing at 21 years old.
Okay.
You were a college athlete and you quit. I too was a college athlete and quit.
Okay.
You still look great. I don't. So there's one. That's our first difference. But
oh boy,
I cannot I was double majoring because I desperately wanted to get married to my wife. That was my reason. You were like, I just want to be excellent. And I'm like, what's the minimum grades that I can get to get out of here with 2 degrees and a wife? That's all I was. 21 years old, while double majoring, you wrote a best-selling book that was in the top 1% of all Amazon books. And that is where our comparison ends, sir. You accomplished more by the age of 21 that I have in my entire life and probably ever will. So how'd you do it, bud?
Well, honestly, all credit to the Holy Spirit. It was not planned at all. I just honestly was originally journaling about 1,033 pages, trying to find myself.
Just about.
Yeah. You know how it is. You're just so in tune with trying to get to know who the Lord just like, who am I? What's my purpose in this world? Like, why am I created? Why am I here on planet Earth? And I really wrestled with that. And I was just honestly trying to seek the Lord. And it says in Matthew 6:33, "Seek the Lord with all your heart, and all the things shall be added onto your life." So I start to like really think about that. I'm like, okay, so it's time to get to know this Jesus man. Like, who are you, Lord? And that literally just kind of turned a lot of pain later on into where, and all my deepest, darkest tragedies turned into like the greatest testimonies that the Lord had used for me. And a lot of people just start reading my journal on accident, and they're like, "Yo, man, you should really write a book." I'm like, "But I don't write. Like, you don't understand something about me. Like, I didn't read till I was 19 years old. Like, I don't do these things." But the Lord qualifies the unqualified, right? And in our weakness, we're made strong. And these are some verses that I really like bleed. And so that kind of happened. I got on social media when I was 19 years old on Instagram. I built my presence there. And the Lord was kind of like putting all the pieces together that I didn't see at the time. And he was like, "Yo, Anthony, if you trust in me, if you surrender and you give me self-denial and obedience, you can get to that next dimension." And that's what kind of happened. It just kind of happened on its own. I dedicated the book to Virgin Mary, and she really blessed it.
So, Father Anthony,
Yes.
I just learned in the break. Apparently, I already knew, but I don't know that he's a double major as well, and one of his majors is in English. And this man, he's had to sign some papers for me and to write some things recently, as Forte Catholic has been launching as a nonprofit. And this man might be the worst person at like the technical versions of English that I've ever seen. And Father Anthony, I just want to point out something that Anthony just said. He couldn't read until he was 19 years old, and not even 2 years later, he had a best-selling book.
Yes.
And you were like, "Ooh, I was published by my college." So how do you feel about Anthony going from not being able to read to 2 years later being more successful than either of us?
Oh, boy.
So
shots fired.
I'm humbled.
I love how I say that you're not good at English, and you're just like, I. I'm not editing that out. It's staying in.
Yes, let's go, baby.
Yeah. No. So that's crazy, though. Can we just talk about that for half a second? Like, you didn't know how to read until you were 19, and then what? That's not a great question. I'm not a good interviewer either, by the way.
Hey, your story. What?
What? How is what?
I was an English major.
Yeah, I didn't read till I was 19. Like, I picked up my first book literally 19, all throughout elementary school, and like, I hope my teachers don't bite me back for this, but I spark noted all the readings, and I never I would skim it just to get one quote, and I'd base my whole essay on that one quote, and I would kind of like BS my way through. But with great pain, what it does, it brings a lot of questions, and it's in that moment where we're able to write our legacy, right? So you just got to be obedient to the cross and not give up. Yeah.
Well, you make me angry because you're so successful. So you wrote this book, and you've brought up pain and kind of the resilience through the pain, and that's what the book was about. It's an acronym, Perfect Another Idea Now. And you talk about like having this fortitude through the pain, and you're very inspirational in all of in the book and your YouTube videos and on social media. And one of the things that I noticed is that, like, I heard your story that you can share a bit in a second, but that you went to UC Davis, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So it's funny that I liked you a lot in hearing you on the other podcasts, because one of my other favorite podcasters was a graduate of UC Davis, and I connect with him a lot, and I connect with you a lot. And I kind of feel like I should have went to UC Davis, because both you and him both say, "I'm not all that smart, but I work really hard and push through things." And
Amen,
UC
brother.
Davis's motto is learn by doing. Not be smart like Harvard or have these great things. Like, I'm sure you've heard that motto a ton, huh?
I never heard it in my life.
Oh, well, they probably wrote it down, and it was before you were 21 and were writing best-selling books, so you probably couldn't see it. But yeah, the learn by doing thing, and it's like, I am who I am. I'm not a Harvard guy, but I'm going to use what I have, and I'm going to use my gifts to better myself, to better the world, to glorify God, and that's what you've been doing. So share a little bit about your story, why you wrote the book, and what the virtue of fortitude has meant to you.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. This is something I'm super passionate on, so feel free to cut me anytime. But if I go on tangents and be like, Anthony, please be back on center.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm used to yelling at Anthony for talking too much on the radio. So.
Good. So we got practice of that. Okay. So yeah, how it all started is, man, through all that suffering, you either have two choices. You can either grow through all that pain or you could go through it. And a lot of people nowadays, the moment that they feel fire, like they touch the fire, they're so quick to retreat because it's just conditioned and it's hardwired in their brains and in their hearts. Like, look, I'm meant for comfort. I don't want to live a life of discomfort. And, you know, I never like tried to fall into that because I knew that I seen it. The Lord had given me this grace to be able to see people that have fallen astray, living that lifestyle. And I seen what the saints were always talking about and saying like, look, you want to be the best that you could be. You got to push yourself. You got to be living in self-denial. You got to carry that daily cross. And that's the only way to be a true disciple. So I kind of always wrestled with that. I never really dabbled much into the world, living in like those big sins, like, you know, that most of us kind of stumble into. And that was kind of a grace. And I really resonate with Saint Teresa of Lisieux. Like the Lord had given me those calculated steps, and he had his sovereign hand kind of guiding my life. So I'm like, man, I did nothing to deserve this. And, you know, it's kind of going through like a very intense, dark period of my life, or a dark night of the soul. And it was in that darkness that the Lord had ultimately broke through every single chain, every single vice, every single insecurity and lack of identity. And he said, look, I am your father, Anthony, and there's no one else but me. I am the love you're looking for. If you place your full trust in me and you never give up, as you keep on continuing to pick up that daily cross, you will see the consolation. You will see my love for you, and it'll manifest through the Holy Spirit, which I've given into you. And so I had this deep.
I got to cut you off because you just said something very important.
Yes.
Have either of you heard on Audible that like a bunch of famous people are doing, like they did a bunch of free books to help people sleep during the stressful time? Have y'all seen that? Like,
yeah.
P. Diddy was the most famous one. So Diddy did it, and it was essentially this thing where it's like it's Diddy talking real quiet and helping you fall asleep.
Oh man, that's so awkward.
You're doing the thing, and like that's what he's doing. And I feel like that's what you just did, because you were talking as God talking to you, but that man's name is also Anthony. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that audio. I'm going to send it to Father Anthony. And I don't remember word for word what you said, but it was something like, Anthony, I am your father. I love you. I am here for you. I'm going to do everything. And I'm going to make Father Anthony listen to that before he goes to bed tonight.
Oh, that's nice. That's probably not the worst spiritual idea, to be honest.
You guys have way too much fun here. This is amazing. You guys are awesome. It's such a gift to be here. Seriously, I'm laughing so much.
Well, good. Okay, so please continue your story that I cut you off for that very important announcement.
It's all good. My cheeks are cramping. You think I'm joking, man? I got to stop. Like,
all right, we're going to have no more fun. We've got 4 more minutes. No more fun. Just share your life story with us.
Yeah, so it was amidst that trials and tribulations that you keep persevering, you keep pressing, and the greatest power will be revealed through that suffering, and that's, you know, Jesus. So I said, okay, I got this message. I did nothing to deserve it. It's all been a grace. It's all been mercy. Now it is in my essence for each and every second that I live my life. I must dedicate it to be able to serve others. And I said, what's the greatest way to do that? And the best way to make an impact is through the sacraments, as Father Anthony knows. That's the greatest way, as all the saints say, to bring Jesus to people. But I'm not there yet. You know, maybe if God's calling me to that, I'm open to it. But I said, I want to set out and give, you know, words of encouragement to exercise the gift of prophecy. And how you can do that? How can you reach more people in a one-on-one level, but also reach a multitude amount of people? That's through speaking, that's through writing, right? And 2 of my greatest weaknesses mentioned, you know, so, but the Lord called me to that. And I, you know, out of obedience and out of, you know, just complete trust and surrender to him, I've seen the fruit that's, you know, being born and continue to see it. So it's just been amazing.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And here's one thing. At the beginning, whenever you texted me about, you know, being in a state of grace, I was like, this guy doesn't know me at all. But a second ago, I was like, you know everything about me, because you just said, you know, as Father Anthony knows, the sacraments bring grace. Like, just assuming I didn't know, and maybe you do know who I am. All right, we gotta have Anthony versus Anthony. So Father Anthony, you get the last question. You've been sitting there very reverently. So you got the last question. Bring us home, bud.
Okay. So
talk into your microphone, please, like you've done this before.
Is anything you published like a #1 best-selling book? Has anything changed since then? Has it become more difficult? Have you gotten more out there with your Instagram and the book and everything? Has that been difficult at all for you to handle?
Not really. I'm continuing to write more books. I actually just published my second one. I have it here. It's on theology of the body. So I'm going to release this one May 31st. But basically, it's always hard to try to bring two of the worlds, like the secular world with the Catholic world. It's really hard to bridge that. It takes like a lot of grace and a lot of prayer. So that's, if my prayer life's not on, like I'm not breathing, my spirit's not breathing, I'm dead. My work is dead. It's not going to bear fruit because I'm relying on my own effort and not God's strength. So I always got to make sure I'm on par with my prayer life and just kind of getting the reps in, baby, and just being docile with the Holy Spirit, open to where he's leading me and trying to grow in humility. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, just to wrap us up, like you two have the same name.
Okay.
And you're much more in line. You're both like, yeah, I'm growing in holiness. And I'm just like, man, that's what I could be. Thanks for coming on today. Here, what I want people to do, I need people to go get the book because, one of the things that we talk about on this show all the time is suffering and how bad I am at it. And a lot of times I go from suffering, and my growth is going from not wallowing in my suffering to like everything is fine, but not like taking that next step and like growing in my faith as you have done. So people need to go get this book. How can they find you? How can they find the book and get connected with you?
You can find me on my website at www.coachanthonysimon.com. My Instagram handle is also at Coach Anthony Simon. Feel free to message me on there. And I'd love to get to know you guys each and individually, and to help lead you to Christ, to do my best and be that instrument.
Good. Well, dude, thanks for coming on. And I have you've given us so much advice. I have one piece of advice for you. And usually it's only advice that I tell to old people because they don't understand. Just stop saying www in front of your website. You don't need it. Just say the name. It's fine. Usually, I've never told that to anybody under the age of 53. But you've given so much to me today. I just wanted to give back to you. So whenever we come back, I'm going to be joined by only one Anthony because that's about all I can handle. Coach Anthony Simon, thanks for coming on today. God bless you. We will be right back. Please do not go anywhere, or I'll be really sad and punch a cat. Father Anthony, there have been some reports that we're all going to be allowed outside soon.
Yeah, maybe it's looking that way. Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't think I will, but what I started doing, because I'm on the camera, it's like, okay, I need my beard to look good, so I started putting the beard balm in. But as we go outside, we're gonna need to look nice again. You are first among sinners in this location.
Yeah, I am a mess.
So, if anybody's going outside, you need to look nice. Ladies, Catholic beard balm is for you. There are lotions and stuff. There's stuff for you too. ForteCatholic.com/beard gets you a percentage off of that, 11 or something. And also, if you want to look cool with your socks, you can go to ForteCatholic.com/socks and get like 15% off or something. I don't know. Go save money and go to the website, ForteCatholic.com/socks or /beard, whichever one you prefer, and look cool when you finally go outside. Yes. I concur. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is a dancing Father Anthony. 2 weeks in a row that we've had a dancing priest on the show. And let's just say this one is inferior. So if you are just tuning in on the radio, or if you're a crazy person and somehow skip around on podcasts and just happen to land on this spot, the big news for today is that Father Anthony looks ridiculous. The second biggest news is that Forte Catholic is now a nonprofit organization, and I am doing that full time. One of the funny things that we didn't have time for in the first segment that I do want to get to, another little funny confirmation. You've heard of this Jennifer Fulwiler, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, so she's an author. She converted from atheism. She's very prominent within the Catholic world. She had a daily 2-hour show on SiriusXM radio, the Catholic channel, and she decided around the same time that I decided to blow up my life to blow up hers.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to her new podcast where she's been kind of updating people and explaining why she did it. And she was like, this is where I felt called, and kind of like there's been multiple times that God just called me to blow it up, and I'm like, hey, I understand that. I've blown my life up many times, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, but that's a whole other thing. And so I had been kind of tracking her story and listening, and like it was another confirmation, like after I made the decision and started going, like just another confirmation of like, hey, this is cool, because she left a very stable job to pursue comedy, when radio is one of the few things that's still working right now, and comedy is one of the things that like doesn't exist, like like comedy clubs and all these things.
Yeah, exactly.
So people have been messing with her. So I had been tracking this whole situation, and then this young man who's a friend of mine, his name's Josh. He goes by Riddle Nerd all over the internet. He calls in to Jen's show. He's been a huge fan of Jen. On her last show, Jen takes her last caller, and it's Josh. And Josh shares the story of how me and Josh met Jen, and how like the reason I know Josh and the dinosaur priest who you have met, Father Joseph Anthony Kress.
Right.
The reason we know each other is because I went to go meet Jen. They were talking with her. And then we walked up to her, and immediately like 18 fangirls walked up.
Yeah.
So we let Jen do her thing, and the three of us guys just talked for like 30 minutes and all became friends.
Yeah.
And that's the story he shared on her show. I was the subject of the last call on Jennifer Fulwilder's radio show.
I'm glad you were able to make Jennifer Fulwilder's exit from Sirius XM all about you. That's beautiful, Dave.
It was tremendous. And I was just like, Josh, she must have hated that. And I don't have confirmation whether she hated it or not, but I did recently listen to her podcast about her last show, and she kept talking, building up. She's like, there was this caller that meant so much to me, and I listened to the whole thing. No mention of me. I was like, I told Josh, I was like, she absolutely hated that I was the subject of her last call. I was on her show a few times, and I sang her stupid songs. Like, I'm just the silly clown. And she was like, she kept saying like, oh, the last show didn't go like I planned. I'm like, oh, I'm aware.
That's what you get when you have live callers. That's part of the medium.
It was great. Okay, so that was just a funny little story, and just an update for people that I completely blew up my life. So here we are. One thing we did last week, is we played a game that we hadn't played in like a year and a half. We had not played this game since you co-host started co-hosting, and it's been a year and a half. How do you feel that you've been doing this for a year and a half?
Time feels so weird. It does not feel like I've been doing this a year and a half. That makes it feel like it's something. It makes it real. Like it normally feels like, oh, my friend Taylor does a podcast, and I get to help him out every once in a while. Not like I've been on your podcast for a year and a half. Those feel like two different things. But here we are.
Here's the crazy thing. I was going through and like as just kind of going through memory lane with the show over the last few weeks, because I've been sentimental about it, and we're currently on episode 189. Your first appearance as a guest, the first time you ever came on the show, was episode 88. It was 101 Dalmatian episodes ago.
That's over 100 weeks. That's so weird. That's weird.
It's very strange. And we just had our friend anniversary. In my time hop, all I ever see of our conversations, you deleted your half of our friendship when you deleted your Twitter.
Yes. So
all I see is my replies to you and try to figure out what we were talking about. But I could tell that it was the first day that we met and became friends, and that was 3 years ago. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. So, anyway, we played this game called Life Verse, and we brought it back last week, and people seemed to enjoy it. If you're not familiar with Life Verse, I talked earlier in the show about how God doesn't speak to me all that much anymore. But the one way that he does speak to me is he has given me a special gift, a very prophetic gift, to read scriptures. Or the people come up to me, they're like, hey, what's the life verse? What's the verse that the Lord wants to speak to me through today? And he's given me a special gift to pull out my Bible, and I read it and I apply it to their lives, and it completely changes everybody's lives. I did this with Liv last week. I 100% promise that it was not planned. And I think last week, if you did not listen to last week, go back and listen to at least the first segment of last week. It's great.
It was one of your best segments. I loved it.
It was insane because it worked. Like this whole thing's a bit, right? But it worked. Like it was like the perfect verse, but it wasn't to speak into her life. It was for comedic effect. And that's the only way God talks to me. So a couple of people one thing that I said is like, hey, if you want, you can request a verse or request that I give you a life verse. So here we go. Are you ready for this?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so Robert the Nobody over on Twitter and the social medias,
Mhm.
he's a great guy. He was actually my 1,000th follower. That's how we became friends because it was memorable. It's how I crushed the guys over at the Roman Circus podcast by beating them to 1,000 followers. So I'm just gonna pray real quick. Okay, done. And I'm gonna pull up a verse. And as we all know, most of the important verses are in the book of Ecclesiastes.
Right.
And a very holy number, 7.
Okay.
So we're going to do chapter 7 and verse 7. The Lord just spoke to me. It says, exhortation can make a fool out of the wise, and a bribe corrupts the heart. So we're gonna see if you have any gift in this. We're gonna see if God speaks to you at all. Do you think that this can apply to Robert the Nobody's life at all?
Yeah, and it applies specifically to his relationship with you, right? Because this makes perfect sense. That if exhortation makes a fool out of the wise. If I had never heard you talk before, I see your beard. You're a man of tall stature. I may think from outward appearances that you're a wise person, but I listened to your podcast one time, like, oh, this man is a fool, right? And then he bribed his way into friendship with you by becoming your 1,000th follower. So it's a parable of Robert Nobody and your friendship, and that's what the Lord wanted to confirm via this verse that you providentially pulled from the Bible.
And a bribe corrupts the heart. So both his
it's
heart
also
and
a warning.
mine
It's also a warning.
Have been being corrupted ever since we became friends. All right, our next one is from Andy Shaggy Cordy, who's a friend of the show. He's the one that creates the Saint cards that we use over on our Patreon. He's a tremendous guy. He looks exactly like Shaggy comes from I keep wanting to say Winnie the Pooh. That's incorrect.
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo, where are you?
I now want to see that crossover really
bad. My kids have been watching it, and it's funny. So it's a new movie and everything. But anyway, that's not the point. For Andy, the Lord said it in the book of Hebrews. And Andy's a very humble guy, so he likes to be put last. So obviously the last book and the last verse in the book of Hebrews, which says, "Grace be with all of you." So obviously, I mean, it's very obvious that this is the nice way of saying goodbye after he just exhorted the Hebrews.
Right.
So at the end of every one of my conversations with Andy, I need to be very firm but loving with him,
right.
And he needs to be firm and loving in his relationships with his family, with his wife, with his kids, and he needs to say, "Grace be with all of you." But just like a parent says, like, "I love you" after like putting a kid in timeout and then in bed, it's like you mean it, but also it's like get your stuff together.
Right. I think this also should be like his Mandalorian catchphrase. Instead of saying "I have spoken," he just says "Grace be with all of you," and then leaves the conversation. That's a great power move. Just do that.
Which is what Paul and or the writer to the Hebrews said.
Exactly. It's definitely Paul. That's my opinion. That's also correct.
No one cares about your opinion. Okay, so Adrian Giraldi, who, by the way, we had an absolute blast on his podcast. It might be the most fun, like rapid response Q&A I've ever done in my entire life. We had an absolute blast. Go check it out. It's called Living Ardently. I did an hour of podcasting with him. I still have no idea what the word ardently means, and I didn't want to. I wanted to ask at the beginning.
It's too late to ask. It's too late.
We didn't get to it. So by the end, I was like, okay, I'm smart.
That's okay. He doesn't know what Forte means, so you guys are probably fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so obviously, let's see if you have a gift in this. Do you have a Bible there?
I do. I have a Bible here. Yes. I got Bible commentaries. Oh, this makes me angry. Where's my Bibles?
The priest can't find his Bible.
I got I only have a New Testament though.
Okay.
I've got my full Bible in. Anyway, yes. Okay.
Okay. So let's see if the Lord has given you this gift. So go ahead and pray real quick and have God lead you to a verse in the Bible for Adrian.
Okay. So I'm praying. Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is from the St. Jude, the letter of St. Jude, and it's from the middle. That's a very short letter. Okay, verse 17 of is St. Jude only one chapter long? Do I know my Bible? Yes.
There are many books in the New Testament. I shared this many eons ago on the show, but I used to really like try to impress people when I was in college. Be like, hey, I read 3 books of the Bible today, 3 chapters, because there's a bunch of books that are only 1 chapter.
Okay, this is verse 17, St. Jude. But you must remember, beloved, the prediction of the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's it.
And just like, it's obvious what the Lord is saying here. He cuts off mid-sentence, which means that just like that sentence, the Lord is not done with Adrian yet. He's still working on him. He's still young. He's in ministry, doing great things for the YouTubes and the podcasts. But the Lord is not done with him yet. There's still more that he's going to write. And all he has to do is look into the scriptures to find that answer. Because if we would read that next verse, we would get the full answer. But we're not going to, because that's not how this works.
No. When you do this, you get into kind of a preacher voice, and it makes me want to make like affirmation sounds when you do it. Like charismatic Protestant affirmation sounds like,
yes.
Amen.
That will be the next sound effect. It will not replace.
Don't do that. Out of context, that might sound weird.
It will not replace this one.
No,
but it will be put right next to it.
Great.
All right. So the next thing that people started doing, Adrian was actually the first person to do this. I said it can also be like other people in your life or characters. Yeah. So my favorite one that Adrian submitted was Darth Vader.
Yeah.
We'll see how the Lord is speaking to Darth Vader, the chosen one, evil Jesus, as some may call him. So
I've never heard him called that, but that's perfect.
It is perfect. So obviously, like Darth has these kind of 2 parts of his story. There's the Anakin part and the Vader part, right? Yeah. Just like there are 2 parts of the Bible. So there are going to be 2 verses for Vader. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? So the first one is from the book of Exodus. There was a mass exodus from the Jedi Temple, and those were the murderers of the Jedi. So here in Exodus chapter 12, verse 10, you must not keep any of it beyond the morning. Whatever is left over in the morning must be burned up. And obviously, this is because in his fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was burned up. Because he was trying to be greedy, just like the Israelites were being greedy and trying to hoard the manna coming from heaven. Like he was trying to be greedy and take things into his own hands instead of trusting the leaders in his life, like the Israelites are supposed to be trusting God. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously he got burned. And like a lot of times when we say, oh yeah, I got burned on that deal, somebody didn't go with it. He literally got burned. Like his limbs got cut off and he got burned and then became evil. And like it solidified that. So dang it, Darth, the Lord has spoken.
You are so good at this that it makes me angry. that it makes me feel like I can't trust anything you say anymore because you can do it so well. I can't tell if you're. It's just this is an amazing. You really do have a gift.
Here's what's crazy.
Yeah,
like people have already said from last week they don't believe me. I do not prep this. I just talked I set it all up. I didn't even look at my Bible before the setup. And I talked about Anakin to Darth, and literally it was him burning in fire. And then I get a verse about fire? What the heck?
It's something
Why
else.
Why doesn't God talk to me about important things?
Just the jokes.
Just the jokes. Lord, making all the fun again. All right, so this is for we need some redemption because obviously Darth had some redemption. So the book of James, there's a lot of redemption. Obviously, we all know.
Sure,
this. Yeah. So James chapter 2 verse 14. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? You're throwing up your hands. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious how this connects. Please share with us.
Right. The good work of throwing the Emperor into the Death Star to save his son. He proved the faith he had in the light side of the Force by putting his life on the line and throwing away the old Emperor and his old life and you see the redemption that comes through that. It's a beautiful thing.
And for fans of like the cartoons, like Clone Wars that just ended with its final season and Rebels, we see multiple times where the light is still in Darth. It's just being repressed. And that's like he still has the faith, but his works are not showing it. He's murdering people.
Exactly.
Right? And then right at the end, boom, he shows it, and he has it. And this is why a few weeks ago when we did the litany of the Star Wars characters, why Darth was deathbed conversions, because on his deathbed he did all these terrible things, and on his deathbed he did the right thing and saved the world. Good for him.
Amazing.
All right, we have time for one more, and you get to decide.
Okay.
We're going to do one other co-host of this show. Who would
Oh.
you like to do a life verse for?
Okay, so I guess we can't do Liv is out because you already did Liv's life verse.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
changed her life last week.
Yeah. Let's do John Blevins.
Okay,
My
so
boy.
John, here we go. John, obviously more of an Old Testament kind of guy.
Yes.
I mean, the whole like having a beard and shaving it off, that's a thing that the Israelites would do when they were in mourning and deep sin, which
Right.
I think just revealed something to us about John.
Didn't it though?
But the book of Haggai, obviously.
Obviously, yes.
Chapter 2, there are only 2, so another quick read if you'd like to.
Yeah.
This is the commitment I made to you when you came out of Egypt. My spirit remains in your midst. That's always a word. He doesn't remain in our midst, like little while. Midst.
Now I can't say it.
Do not fear.
Mm.
So, I mean, I have some things I'd like to share, but do you think this means anything for John in his life?
I would rather have you go because I'm just so entertained by this.
Obvious. Okay. So obviously, John, I mean, about a year ago, or not even a year ago, started a new job.
Right.
And then things were rocking along. He was doing great things. And then COVID hit and it made things very difficult, right? He's still doing a great job. But this is the Lord saying, look, do not fear. I am still with you. The commitment that I said that I would be with you whenever you took this new job, I will continue to be with you, even in the midst of all these crazy things and everything going on. The Lord bless and keep you. Jonathan Lene Blevins.
I think another way to read that is that even though he shaved his beard and his whole brand is his beardedness, even though he did that terrible, terrible act, God's still with him because that's how much God loves John Blevins.
I will be with you, and I will remind you of that in many months when your beard returns.
Yes.
So anyway, we did it, Anthony. Was this an exciting thing for you?
It was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I am genuinely shocked at how good you are at it. It's amazing. I shouldn't be, but I am. It was a lot of fun.
I always love it when my friends are shocked that I'm good at things. So anyway, that's the wrong music, but what else would happen whenever I'm a professional now. This is what I do for a living. Anyway, we did the show, guys. Thanks so much for your support. Thanks for listening all this way. Anthony, thanks for looking ridiculous. You are a fool for Christ.
Amen.
I'll be back next week. Say it! You look Egyptian.